Let's play a game of buy or sell. Will Riley Leonard have a better season at Notre Dame than Sam Hartman and Jack Coan? And will Notre Dame join a conference within the next 5 years? All that and more coming up in today's edition of Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Thursday, January 25th, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And as always, you can watch a full episode on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching along, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're listening to the podcast, please rate the show 5 stars and subscribe on your favorite platform. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. In just a moment here, I'm going to be joined by my old co-host, Luke Smith, to play buy or sell, and we cover a bunch of different topics in today's show. First, we go over some prompts that pertain to the 2024 season, how it's going to go for the Irish, and then we start to look ahead and forecast the future a little bit with some prompts that, you know, we go 5 years down the road in this. We were able to cover a lot. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you do too. Enjoy. All right, Luke Smith is back with me here to play a little game called Buy or Sell. It's basically a staple of any classic sports radio or television show, or in this case, a podcast. But before we get into that, Luke, I got to ask for your thoughts on the biggest news in college football today. Jim Harbaugh is finally leaving Michigan to become the next head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. What was your reaction?
I wasn't that surprised. I figured he was going to leave at some point. I've kind of thought that for a couple of years now. And when you see everything about him seeking protections from being fired, if he had extended with Michigan, well, those are all signs of a very innocent man, obviously. As somebody pointed out, it kind of reeks of Pete Carroll leaving USC. So we'll see what happens to Michigan now, but I don't think it's going to be anything good.
Let's hope not. I think the way I look at it, I'm happy because it's a net negative for Michigan, and I just can't wait to see Jim Harbaugh out here in LA. Like, I was trying to think of the best neighborhood for him to live in, and I found out that the Chargers facilities are in Orange County, and that definitely feels a little bit suited to him and his personality a little bit more than the rest of the city. But yeah, it's I'm also glad it's over, that we don't have to hear about this every single offseason, because this is like the third year in a row, right?
Right. That's a good point. Like, there aren't Chargers fans. Is this going to draw people to the stands now? Like, because usually they just get outdrawn by the opposing team, it seems like.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they literally play 17 road games. I went to a Browns-Chargers game when Baker was still with the Browns, and OBJ was still on the team too, so this was probably a couple years ago, and it was staggering how many more Browns fans were in the crowd than Chargers. Like, it's even worse if it's San Francisco or the Cowboys or hell, even the Steelers honestly pack the stadium. So I don't know, maybe they'll get a little bit more fans, but at least there's going to be some intrigue around this team because they're like basically cursed. They haven't played a normal game in about 4 decades.
Yeah. Good luck on that, because Jim Harbaugh is anything but normal. So
That's true. So in that way, maybe the only way, he's a fit with the Los Angeles Chargers. All right, let's get into our prompts here for buy or sell. We're going to go back and forth on this one. We're going to start with some things that are focused on the 2024 season, and then for the second half of this, we'll get into the future of Notre Dame and also college football at large. So the first one that I'll pose to you, Luke, Riley Leonard will have a better season than Sam Hartman and Jack Coan did in their lone season at Notre Dame. Are you buying or selling?
If we're talking statistically, I think I'm going to sell that, because although Sam Hartman did not have great games against Clemson and Louisville, or really even Ohio State, I think that though it's fine. It didn't go probably the way we intended it to or wanted it to. Statistically, he had like a very, very torrid start to the season, still owns a number of records. And I think that you remove some time from this, people are going to look back on that. And while he didn't throw for as many touchdowns as maybe he did at Wake Forest, he still had a pretty good statistical year. Jack Coan actually ended up having a pretty strong statistical year at Notre Dame as well. And just the way this offense is set up, I don't know that we're going to see Riley Leonard throw for 1,000,000 touchdowns. I mean, I know he didn't play much this year, but he only had 3 passing touchdowns in all the games he had this year. So while I do think that perhaps the team success might be better, statistically, I'm not sure that I believe Riley Leonard is going to have better years than each of those two guys.
Yeah, it's hard to say because Jack Coan did go 11-2 as a starter for Notre Dame his lone season, but he also got benched multiple times. But if you look at his game logs, really starting with that second half against Virginia Tech after he had been benched previously in that game, he kind of went on a tear. If you look at what he did against USC and North Carolina and the rest of the way, and then that culminated in 68 pass attempts against Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl, which is almost impossible to think about Notre Dame passing the ball 68 times in a single game. But they did in a loss to Oklahoma State. So I'm going to say sell because I'm with you on the stats with Sam Hartman. I think Sam Hartman is going to put up better numbers overall. And I think 11-1, that's a really good bar to hit for Jack Coan. So I'm going to sell on that as well. What do we have up next?
Yeah. Also, just before we get to that, Coan also threw for like 400 yards in that opener of the season against Florida State. Like he put up some numbers.
Yeah.
Something Sam Hartman never did himself.
Yeah. That Florida State game, 26 of 35, 366 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Yeah. I remember after that game, now that we're doing this, I'm kind of thinking back. We're like, dude, is Jack Coan going to win the Heisman?
Yeah. Crazy. Next one. Kingston Williamo Asa starts by week 4. Are you buying or selling that?
I'm going to sell that because I just think it's a lot to ask for a true freshman to call out the defense. Now, Jack Kaiser could do that in theory, but I think that responsibility is typically reserved for the Mike, and I don't think Jack Kaiser is going to play Mike linebacker. I think that's going to end up being Drake Bowen, and even though he's very young himself, he'll have about a year and a half, essentially, in the Notre Dame football program by the start of next season because he was an early enrollee last year. So I think that Drake Bowen in week 4 is going to be the starter. Now, if we were to extend this question out to November, maybe I'd be more open to the idea of KVA starting by that point. But even if he's not starting, I think he's going to be very involved in the defense. But I think they're going to lean on Drake at least for the start of the year.
I'm buying this. I think he is going to start at least by week 4, if not week 1. And is Drake Bowen still playing baseball?
I believe so.
I wonder, does that cause some issues? And obviously, I know they speak very highly of him and how cerebral he is. But if he's away from the team in this spring and maybe not even focusing as much in some of the early summer stuff, could that hurt him? Just the way that everybody speaks about this KVA guy, I just have this feeling he might end up starting day one as a true freshman at Mike. And I know that sounds crazy. And in theory, there are less opportunities for a linebacker to start because really Notre Dame's typically only playing with two linebackers out there. But I think it's going to happen.
Who was the last middle linebacker to start for Notre Dame week 1? Was it Teo?
As a freshman?
Yeah. As a true freshman.
Yeah, and did he even? I don't
even think he did. I think he started his freshman season.
Yeah, but I don't think he started week 1.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. But then there was that Stanford game where he had 22 tackles his freshman season. I think he started the rest of the way after that. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a chance he starts. That's a really good point about baseball. I actually didn't even think about that. I know that he's still going to be a part of spring practice, but it's just a lot to ask, man. Really, just kudos to him for doing both sports, especially when they overlap in the way that they do. But yeah, I'm selling, but I think you made a good point there with the baseball. All right, next up, Louisville is going to be the most challenging game on the schedule in 2024.
I think I'm going to buy this, and it sounds strange, but when you start to look at the schedule, let's be honest, it's one of the weaker ones I can remember Notre Dame compiling in our lifetime. Just 3 true road games with the announcement today that the Georgia Tech game will be played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So you have at Purdue, at USC, which could be a very challenging game, but also USC could be anything by that point in the year. And then you also open the year in College Station. And I guess that probably has a case on its own. But the way I view that is that I think that Mike Elko will probably still be figuring some things out roster-wise, and they're just not going to be there yet. You look at who Louisville's brought in. First, they've got those 2 edge rushers coming back that were really good this year. Ashton Gelati's one of them. I forget the other guy's name, but I know they're both back. And then they brought in Tyler Shuck, who's like my age. I don't know how he's still in college, but if he can stay healthy, he's pretty good. Like I've seen him have some moments where he's a pretty good quarterback. They also brought in a receiver from Alabama who this year was hampered with injuries and really didn't do a whole lot. But last year, I think he was Alabama's leading receiver. And he tied for the third in the SEC with 8 receiving touchdowns. That's Ja'Cory Brooks. So that's not nothing. I just think that also feels like a game, even though it's in South Bend. Jeff Brom's going to get his guys up for that. And I could very well see that being a very challenging game.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a huge challenge. I'm already nervous about that game personally, but I think Florida State is actually going to be a little bit tougher game, so I'm selling that. Now, Florida State is in a similar boat where they're kind of reloading, but they've also been very active in the transfer portal. If you look at the On3 transfer portal team rankings, now some of these are a little bit skewed based on the number of guys that they're bringing in, but Louisville is number 1 in these rankings, so that definitely adds to your argument. And then Florida State is there at 4. Now, the difference is Louisville has brought in 24 transfers. They lost 21, but they're in year 2 of the Brom era, so it makes sense that they're still recycling guys through. Florida State has only brought in 14 transfers. They've lost 20, but if you look at the average player rating of the guys they brought in, it's one of the highest in the country. It's only second behind Ole Miss. It's 80.43 based on how they grade out those guys. So I think they're going to be a really good team. I think they're going to be especially good on defense. If you look at who they brought in, DJ Uiagalelei, I'm a little bit scared about him playing in Notre Dame Stadium again because I'm still getting flashbacks to 2020 when he had the best game of his career, honestly. And I think people are still clinging to that. But they also added Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia, who's really good. And they've added 5 former Alabama players. Now, not all of them played, but still, like, you're not ever committing to Alabama if you're not at least something. You got to imagine if they brought in 5 of them, some of them are going to hit. Some of them are going to hit. So I think Florida State is going to be the most challenging game. Louisville definitely is the case. Texas A&M in the season opener will be a challenge, but I'm with you. I still think they're figuring things out. But yeah, the ACC games are actually going to be pretty tough this year.
Yeah, it's a good call. Also, just beating a quarterback a third time, it's challenging. And Jack Plummer actually proved that this year, unfortunately. And that would be time number 3 for DJ Uiagalelei. I hope that his return to Notre Dame Stadium is more like his 2022 game, but we'll see.
Yeah, the good thing is it's in November, so hopefully it's just as cold as it was the last time Florida State came into South. Actually, no, the last time they came in was 2020. I'm talking about the game in 2018. That was your senior day, right?
Yeah, that was a cold one for sure.
Yeah, so hopefully they get rattled by the cold in that one, much like they did back then. Okay, this next one, very important for the team in 2024. Steve Angeli is still on the roster when fall camp starts in August. What are you doing, buying or selling?
I'm selling this. I've really gone back and forth on this. I could see him being on the roster, but I just feel like this might be a situation where he goes through spring camp, realizes I'm really not winning the job. And after that second transfer portal window, or it might not even be the second, but that transfer portal window happens and some other teams see, oh, shoot, we don't have a guy. He might get some more overtures. And I don't know what school that might be, but I could see somebody calling him and arranging something for him to be their starter next year.
Think it'll be Alabama?
Yes, I don't. Maybe Western Alabama. Is that a school? But yeah, I don't know.
It's still so crazy to think about this time last year. If I had told you that Tyler Buchner was going to end up at Alabama after spring practice, it would have been like, you are out of your damn mind. I'm with you, though. I'm selling this. I hope he stays, obviously. I think Notre Dame, you always want a backup quarterback, especially when you have someone like Riley Leonard who runs as much as he does and as physical as he is. There's a real chance that Riley Leonard suffers an injury at some point this season. That's just because of his style of play. And, you know, some things happen like they did with Tyler Buchner in week 2. But I hope I'm wrong, but the vast majority of guys, like 90% of the guys in his position are probably going to leave. And I actually think that Steve Angeli showed enough in that Sun Bowl. I know it's just one game against a pretty depleted Oregon State team, but he looked really good in that. I think there's going to be a market for him. So before we move on to the next one, what do you think the market is going to be like for him? Do you think he's going to be getting like Power 5 starting job looks, or is it going to be like a good group of 5 who just wants another quarterback in the room?
It's a really good question. Like I maybe I just don't know enough about the landscape of quarterbacks across the country to give a really educated answer on that. But I could see him starting at the Power 5 level. Like I think he's probably a Power 5 quarterback. I just don't know if it's at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, I guess if we're trying to be optimistic about him staying, he is pretty close to his degree. Seems like he liked Notre Dame growing up. So I don't know. I'm holding out hope on that one. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Let's move on to the next one here. Everyone who is currently on the staff will still be on the staff at the start of the 2024 season.
It seems like we're getting pretty close to being out of the woods on this, but just because you have no idea what's going to happen and something always happens, I'm going to sell this.
Yeah, I'm selling it too. If you had to pick which assistant is most likely to be on the move.
I'm going to say Chris O'Leary, actually. And I don't know that that's really gotten talked about a lot, but he was pretty sought after in the NFL coaching window last year, and I could see that happening this go round.
I agree. I think I'm selling this for one. I think it's going to be Chris O'Leary or Dylan McCullough because as we're seeing right now in real time, the NFL hiring cycle is still ongoing. And as a matter of fact, it's moving at a slower pace than it has in years. And I think that's part of what the NFL wanted to do. They instituted all these rules about when you can interview coaches. Like, for example, the Falcons want to interview the Lions offensive coordinator for their head coaching job, but they can't do that because he's still coaching right now. So I think that there's still a lot of moves left to be made at the NFL level. And Chris O'Leary was targeted by the NFL. I think Dylan McCullough is probably going to get some interest as well, and he has a history in the NFL. Who knows with Al Golden, as good as we feel about his future today, I think that he's probably going to generate some interest as well. So I'm with you. I'm selling. I don't really know who it's going to be, who the most likely one is, but I think Chris O'Leary makes the most sense given the interest in him last year. And also, he's been around at Notre Dame for a really long time. He's the one guy left from Brian Kelly's staff, which seems crazy that he's the lone guy left.
Yeah, he was a GA yelling at me when I was in school about bookstore basketball. So he's been there for a while. That was a long time ago.
He was a GA. That's right. And then he got promoted.
Yeah.
Who else was on that team that was yelling at you? What was the issue there again? What did you screw up?
They didn't like how I had seeded them in the round of, I guess it was 16 or something, but I seeded them right. But it was him, Rees, I think Jimmy Thompson, who's now at LSU as an assistant. I think Fink might have been on that team as well, and one other walk-on. So
was Rees giving you a hard time?
No, because it was a charity basketball tournament.
Dude, I for all the listeners out there,
they lost, by the way, so I was right.
The first round?
Not first round. So no, this is the round of 16 where you reseed everybody.
Right. I was gonna say, I think the first round game that we played in,
it's like 538. It's a lot of teams.
Yeah, and there was like a group of kids wearing costumes in the game that we played. It was pretty annoying that I had to show up. I think it was pretty cold too. But yeah, for those who if you know about bookstore basketball, it's this huge charity basketball tournament that goes on at Notre Dame every single year. Luke had the honor of handling the seeding, and let me tell you, every single year, the seeding, the reseeding is a giant controversy, and without fail, someone is going to complain because they feel that they got shafted in their opponent in the first round, and you were getting the brunt of that.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward exercise. Unfortunately, the competitors don't always see it that way, but I felt pretty justified how I did this. I think I knew that campus better in its basketball ability than most anybody else, so that's okay with me.
All right, let's move on to the next one here. All of the transfers Notre Dame took during this offseason will still be on the roster when fall camp starts.
I know this sounds crazy, but this is something I thought of earlier just because of what happened to Notre Dame with Caleb Smith last year. And I'm sure that the prevailing odds to this question are that, yes, they all will be, but I'm going to sell this. Like, just something's going to happen, whether it's like a medical disqualification or just not a fit at Notre Dame. Like, I just feel like that's kind of part of the push and pull of the transfer portal era. And I know that Notre Dame's pretty strategic about how they go through the transfer portal, but this just feels like something that might rear its ugly head again.
So I'm going to buy this. I actually was surprised when you put this down. I was wondering where you were going with this one. So it's interesting to hear that. But the Caleb Smith thing is a good point because if you think back to the conversation about him when he committed to Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame was just in such desperate need for receiver help that it was like, oh,
Right.
thank God they got someone. And then
Right.
he couldn't even beat out the freshman in spring practice. And we're like, oh, wow, the wide receiver situation is not great. Although I think we're all like optimistic that maybe it's a good thing that the freshman beat him out. And I think it was a good sign of things to come because Rico Flores and Jaden Greathouse had a great season last year in their freshman seasons. But yeah, that was a weird deal. So I'm going to buy, but I see your point on this one now. What do we got up next?
We've got Christian Gray. We'll start at the corner spot opposite Benjamin Morrison in 2024.
Okay, so I'm going to buy this, but I think what Notre Dame does with Jaden Mickey is quietly going to be one of the biggest storylines of this offseason because Christian Gray can probably play nickel. Jaden Mickey can't. Like, they tried to play him a little bit there his freshman season. He's just not physically built for that. I think he only weighs like 177 pounds. If you're playing nickel, you got to be a big dude. You got to be able to play in the box and stop the run. And Gray is more suited to do that. But I just think that Gray is so good at corner that he just needs to be split out wide. I know Notre Dame added Jordan Clark in the transfer portal out of Arizona State. And if you look at his stats, they weren't that great at Arizona State. Now, maybe that was a byproduct of just being surrounded by terrible players on that Arizona State defense. But we're going to have to wait and see. I think that odds are Gray is going to rotate quite a bit with Jaden Mickey. The staff loves him. But I do think that he's going to be the starter, and then Mickey's going to rotate in, and then we'll probably see Jordan Clark at the start at nickel early if he becomes a liability. Maybe they move things around, but I think that's how it's going to start.
Yeah, I think that Gray is going to start as well, but I think I have the solution for our nickel problem. I've been on this guy for years. I think Clarence Lewis is going to start at nickel. He's finally going to have his moment in the sun as a fifth-year senior. Well, yeah, would that be his fifth year? Or would he just be a legit? Yeah. Hey, why not? Why not?
I mean, he's coming back. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he would come back if he didn't think that there was any prospect of him playing. And clearly he's not going to be playing on the outside. So I could see it. At the very least, he's going to be rotating with Jordan Clark or just coming in on that dime package. All right, next up, we'll move a little bit quicker on these because we got to get to the future ones too. All right, I got this one. Jaden Greathouse will lead the team in receptions in 2024.
Yeah, I'm buying that.
Really? I am going to sell it. I thought I was going to buy it, but I think that Jane Thomas is poised for, I think, a comeback year is fair to say. Like, even though he appeared in a lot of games, he just was not healthy at all after that Ohio State game. And I think that what we saw in that bowl game is a sign of things to come. And the fact that he's so big that he's never really going to come off the field, even when Notre Dame is in run packages, I actually think that gives him the leg up because I think Jane Greathouse is going to rotate a little bit more, and he's going to come off the field just because of his position.
Yeah, that's fine. You spoke of health there. I just think Greathouse at full health, you're going to see kind of what you saw against Navy, and even towards the end of the year where he got back to healthy. I just really like his game, and I think he's going to end up being that guy.
Yeah, he's a stud. I think the best case scenario for Notre Dame wide receivers next year is if he is like the clear wide receiver number one. If that's the case, and then you got Thomas and Bo Collins and Chris Mitchell, all as like supplementary pieces, that's huge for the offense.
Totally. Okay, speaking of next year, buy or sell. Notre Dame will host a first-round playoff game in 2024.
They better.
Yeah. So I agree with that, but I was also thinking about this, like, I don't really this is going to sound ignorant. I'm not sure how the seating totally works yet. Like, I get the buy aspect of it, but are we going to have like the same cat and like dog show where it's like, oh, here's the college football playoff selection show. Like, is it still 12 random people ranking these teams 1 to 12?
Yeah, the
that's
committee
very
is still going to exist.
okay. Yeah, I just worry that like some of this stuff might get screwed up with just the weird tie-ins that this new format has. If Notre Dame goes 12-0 though, it shouldn't be an issue, and I think they should go 12-0. But that's what gives me a little bit of pause.
They basically have to finish in the top 8 or maybe 9, depending on how the conference champions play out.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if they finish in the top 4, then they're the 5th seed. They have a bye. If they finish 6th, 7th, or 8th, they have not a bye, excuse me. They have a home game. They'll host the first round of the playoff games. So if they're, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, they will host that first round. Now, if they're 9th, they could, if there's a conference champion behind them because of that stupid rule where then they would actually get the first round bye, which could happen in like the ACC, or maybe even the Big 12, honestly, although I think the Big 12 is going to be pretty decent next year with the new teams that they added. So assuming Notre Dame finishes 11-1, I do think that puts them in a position to finish in the top 8, in which case, they'd be hosting that first round game. So are you buying too?
Yeah, I am. I think spending the couple days before Christmas in South Bend sounds pretty good, which I never thought I'd say.
That would be, God, that'd be so fun to see a playoff game at Notre Dame Stadium. All right, let's move on now to the second category. We got a couple future prompts here looking beyond the 2024 season. This first one, Kenny Minchey will be the starting quarterback for Notre Dame in 2025.
Buying that. I really like his motion. If Steve Angeli transfers, I think he will be the starter over CJ Carr and I guess Deuce Knight. Well, assuming Deuce Knight stays committed by then, but I think he's going to be the guy. Like I really kind of like what I see from him, and I think he's going to be the starter next year.
Yeah, because we're already selling Steve Angeli being around for fall camp, that means that Kenny Minchey is going to be the backup this year. I think next year he'll be poised to start. By that point, he'll be the same age that Steve Angeli is going to be this season. And I think that Kenny Minchey has a little bit more just natural God-given ability than Steve Angeli does. And I'm with you. Like, a lot of people are penciling in CJ Carr to be the starter next year. Like, I am very cautious of playing someone that young. And I know that he's got a very bright future, and I know that he's super talented. And I'm still very high on CJ Carr, but I can't get the stain of watching Drew Aller play this year.
Right.
Like, he looked so bad, and I still think he has a good future, but he came in, he was a much more sought-after prospect than even CJ Carr was, and he's very talented, but man, did he struggle. And he struggled because he's young, and he's playing on a team with high expectations going up against some really quality defenses, and he struggled mightily when he was doing so. So I think that, man, if you play CJ Carr as a redshirt freshman, you better be damn sure that he's ready for that moment.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on. Notre Dame will join a conference within the next 5 years. Buy or sell?
So the key word here is within the next 5 years. So I'm going to sell it because the new NBC contract runs through 2029. And I think that by the time that contract runs out, I do think that the landscape in college football is going to change in a way that is essentially going to force Notre Dame into joining one of the two super conferences. They're either going to join the Fox conference or the ESPN conference. The Big Ten or the SEC.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I guess that means selling, given on the word, predicated on the word within here, but I do think they ultimately will join the Big Ten.
Okay. This next one might get us in trouble. Marcus Freeman is still the head coach in 5 years.
What do I say to this? I'm going to buy this. Okay. I'm actually going to buy this. I don't know how strongly I believe that, but if this year is a roaring success, then I think he's going to have some momentum to really stick around for a while.
And this is the year that after the season, he's due for an extension, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you think if Notre Dame has a really good year this year, which we all expect, he's going to get a big raise. I mean, he's already, well, I don't want to say he's already one of the highest paid coaches in college football because I don't know all the contract details and no one really does because all of that information is private, thanks to how Notre Dame does their whole contracts. But assuming Notre Dame has a good year, they're going to give him a bunch of money. It's going to change the buyout. So as long as he's able to maintain that, then yeah, I think that there's a chance he's the coach in 5 years, but I'm actually going to sell it. I'm not going to predict where I think he's going to be. I just think that he's very young. I don't think he looks at this job as like the place he's going to be for like 20 or 30 years. And if he's after 5 years, he'd be around for a long time. And the way that the Notre Dame job is, man, the pressure, the time commitment, all of that is a lot. And I just think that odds are he's probably not going to be around in 5 years. But if he is, that means things have probably gone pretty well. And I hope he does stay.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. While we're on that topic, regardless of how long his tenure is, Notre Dame will finish with a top 5 recruiting class under Marcus Freeman.
So I'm going to buy it, but it's going to be close. I wanted to hold it. I think they will get a class that finishes 5th.
All right.
They're going to get more than that, but I think that they can get to 5 if they have a really good year this year. And as Notre Dame continues to shore up their NIL department and the way they utilize that, and if Notre Dame can get in the playoff a few times, maybe get a big win over the big dogs, I think that the visibility of Notre Dame and also what they're doing in the NFL, I think that that's eventually going to go a long way with these recruits, and I think they're finally going to get one that's like right around 5. But it's going to be close. I don't feel super confident in that buy.
Okay, well, I'm glad you said that because I'm selling it. So,
Okay, I like this one. Tommy Rees will return to the Notre Dame coaching staff one day. I added the coaching staff part to clarify.
I'm going to sell that. I do not think he will coach college football again unless it's a head coaching job. And even that I'm not so sure of. I kind of think he's in the NFL for good now.
I'm buying it.
Wow. Okay, there you go.
I think that there will be a world. Again, I don't feel super confident on either of these last two. I think there will be a world where we're looking at Tommy Rees, the head coach of the University of Notre Dame, which, man, can you imagine that?
Can you imagine what your comments are going to look like tomorrow morning when this shit?
That's a good point. You want to know one way to ruin a podcast? Say Tommy Rees is going to be the head coach here pretty soon. All right, let's move on to the next one, though. This is more of like over-under, basically. Notre Dame will make the 12-team playoff 3 times over the next 5 seasons.
Yeah, and so, like, that's including this year, which it sounds so dumb to do this, but, like, they kind of have to make it this year. Like, they just do.
They really do.
So that really means 2 more times over the next 4 years. I'm going to say yes. I'm buying this, okay? I think it's interesting because you hear people talk about prior to this format, like, well, once it goes to 12, Notre Dame should really be in it every year. But then once you start thinking about all the auto spots that get taken up, it's really like fighting for 7 spots, essentially, is what it is. And so I am going to buy this because I just like the way the roster is being built right now, and I think that they'll be one of the most talented teams in the country. But if they only make it twice, I won't be devastated. I won't be shocked either.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as 3 is not best case scenario, but that's really good if they make it 3 times. And it's basically like every other year, assuming they make it this year. I think 2 is good enough to retain Marcus Freeman. If they only make it 1 in the next 5 years, I don't think Marcus Freeman is going to be the head coach of Notre Dame after that period of time. This is a good one. The college football playoff will still have a 12-team field in 2030.
Yeah, so I thought about this, and I was trying to find a contract for how long this current iteration, and by current iteration, I mean new iteration of the playoff is supposed to run. I couldn't find anything. So I don't know, because I feel like the 4-team had like a set date, like it's going to run through this year. It obviously got ignored, but at least they put it out there. I'm going to sell this. I think that this is going to get expanded to like 16 or 32 by the time 2030 is around.
32 seems like a lot. That's just so
it
many
does,
games.
But so did 12.
Yeah, I would be surprised. So I am going to buy this. Now, I think what's going to change is once we get these super conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC, you're going to have really good teams lose like 3 games just because their schedule is so brutal. And I think that is going to lead us essentially to a playoff that really only factors in the 2 big conferences. And then we're going to get into that super conferences where like the Big 12 and the ACC just have to sort of morph into those 2. So I still think it's going to be 12 teams, but I do think there's going to be some change. So basically the the 12-team playoff is going to go on until 2026, and then everything resets in 2026. It looks like ESPN is going to have all the rights, which is a little bit shocking. And it's kind of funny because in that, I think Pete Thamel broke it, and he's like, sources say that ESPN is getting the rights to this next college football playoff. Like, oh, Pete Thamel, the guy, the insider for ESPN, you got this scoop. I wonder how you got it. So I think that that's going to have a big impact because the athletic directors, a lot of those people did not want that. They don't think it's good for the sport. I would agree. And I think that there's going to be a lot of change after that 2026 when they basically reset the whole thing. There's probably going to be some conference realignment and stuff like that. But I do think that 12 is the max because once you start getting beyond that, just the amount of games, maybe 16. Like I could see him going to 16. Anything beyond that, it's then you're talking about college kids playing like 17 or 18 games, and I think that's a lot. All right, what do we got next year?
It's the last one, I think, and this comes off the heels of watching tough Notre Dame loss to Miami in hoops tonight, but Micah Shrewsbury will make a Final Four at Notre Dame before Marcus Freeman makes a Final Four at Notre Dame.
Look, I'm all in on Shrewsbury, Shrews crew, ride or die, but I'm absolutely selling this. Notre Dame hasn't made a Final Four at men's basketball since 1978. Like, I can't even really picture a world in where the Notre Dame men's basketball team is playing basketball on that first Saturday in April. I mean, I'd love to be wrong on this, but especially after watching the team this year, man, it just seems like they got a long way to go before they even make the tournament, let alone the Final Four. I would hope that the football team is able to do it before him.
I hope so too. I'm going to buy this stuff. No, I'm kidding. I'm selling that. That's going to get me in trouble. I do think it's going to happen. And that's based on a conversation I had with an assistant on the team at one of the football games this year, actually, where he told me, you know what, I'm going to be honest. We're not going to be that great this year, but I guarantee in a couple of years we'll be competing for championships. And I believed him. He had conviction. So why not both? I guess that's the better answer. But, yeah, fine. I'll sell it.
I actually have one more. I didn't write this down. I wanted to surprise you.
Okay.
We will experience peak happiness in our lifetimes, a.k.a. Notre Dame wins a national championship.
Why'd you have to do that? I'm selling that.
Is this just pessimistic? We'll just never be happy again?
I hate the 12-team playoff, and I think winning 4 games is very difficult in the playoff.
Never's a long time.
It is. But I don't know how long my never is.
I'm going to buy it because I have no choice, dude. This is the horse I rode in on.
I get it.
I have to think that they will win it all. I don't know. I mean, hey, dude, Michigan just won a national championship. Imagine if I told you Michigan is going to win a national championship in 2023, like back in 2020 during the COVID year. That really wasn't that long ago. And you think about what they were able to do. Yes, the 12-team playoff changes things, but
yes, they cheated.
Maybe it was worth it.
Yeah.
But what's the line from Rudy? Having
dreams is what makes life tolerable. Yeah, fair enough.
There we go. Let's end it there. All right, Luke. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Tomorrow, we're doing another mailbag episode, and if you want to be featured on the show, drop your questions in below in the YouTube comments, or you can send them on X at Locked On Irish, or DM me on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. And please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'll see you guys tomorrow.